In this lesson, we're going to transition from REST-style web services to SOAP-based services. So let me start with a quick overview. SOAP is an XML dialect under W3C control. W3C, of course, is the World Wide Web Consortium. There are two official versions. 1.1 is the default, and 1.2 is the current version. For a programmer, there's very little difference between the two versions, and the examples that we'll be looking at could be done really in either version. At one time, SOAP stood for Simple Object Access Protocol. Nowadays, officially, it's no longer an acronym. SOAP also can be looked at a slightly higher level as a messaging protocol, and the messages consist of XML documents. They're commonly called SOAP envelopes because, as you can see in this little sketch, the document or outermost element is tagged with envelope, spelled exactly as you see there. The SOAP message can have an optional header that would contain metadata. We'll get into some details. And the required body, which contains the informational content. SOAP-based conversations look like HTTP conversations for the most part. The conversational pattern is typically request-response. So, a client begins the conversation by posting a request to the service. The body of that request is a SOAP envelope, and then the service responds to the client with another envelope, the response envelope. One of the most attractive features about SOAP is that mostly the XML remains transparent. That is, we don't see it any place in the code on the client side or on the server side, and that's because the underlying SOAP libraries handle the marshalling and unmarshalling. We'll see that in examples. As the saying goes, a picture is worth 1,000 words, so let me bring up 3 pictures to help with this introduction. So here's the first of those. This depicts a SOAP message semi-officially. Here's what I mean by that. The SOAP message contains 3 parts. So if you look at the top, you see the optional SOAP header, more about that later, the required SOAP body. These 2 parts together are sometimes referred to as the SOAP part. SOAP also can have optional attachments, and those attachments could be of any data type. So, for example, a SOAP message might contain as attachments a movie in some format. There are better ways to send binary payloads than by using SOAP, but the important point is you could actually use SOAP in that way to deliver multimedia content. As noted in the very quick overview, for the most part, SOAP remains transparent on both the service and the client side, and that's because XML played such a huge role, and the SOAP libraries do conversions. So in this example, you see conversions from Java into XML types on one end, and from Ruby types to XML on the other end. In this particular depiction, Java might be the client language and Ruby the service language, or vice versa. The really important thing is that XML data types, in particular XML schema types, act as the intermediate layer. XML, you might say, is what makes the services interoperable. So the clients can be written in one language and the service can be written in a different language. The reliance on XML, and the XML schema in particular, has other benefits. This is the most complicated picture, so let me try to describe what it's showing. Suppose that we're on the server side and we get an incoming SOAP request. We have an XML schema that can validate that request. So I'm going to jump ahead a bit. In SOAP, it's typically the messages themselves, those XML envelopes, that are data typed. So the XML schema describes in full detail what the request should look like. So on the receiving end, the first thing any production-grade SOAP server is going to do is to parse the incoming request to see if it's properly formatted. If not, an error message is going to go back. In SOAP, this is referred to as a SOAP fault. Only if the message is properly formatted, that is, validated, is it going to be forwarded to the application. And the service operation is then going to perform whatever logic is appropriate, generate a response, SOAP message, and send that back to the client. This overview provides a general picture of how SOAP works. In the next lesson, we'll get down into concrete details by looking at code for a SOAP-based service.